Seriously, you're so useless, even though you're old. Lifting her beautiful willow eyebrows, my boss Catherine glares at me. Being lectured by a boss in her 20s is tough for a man in his 40s. I'm sorry, I'll redo it. Me, Ryan, holding the document with the air pointed out, bowed my head to her. With a huff, Catherine scolded me. Being a contract worker in your 40s is questionable enough for a man, but making repeated mistakes, what are you thinking? I'm sorry. My mom, who I live with, suddenly got hospitalized, and I couldn't do overtime. It's an excuse to have to work overtime to produce materials. And you are a third-class person who can't separate your personal life from your work life. That's why they call you a middle school graduate. Some employees chuckled in response to her words. But that's harsh. My father collapsed when I was in middle school. He had a stroke suddenly at work and was taken to the hospital, but he passed away soon after. My mother said, I have enough savings to send you through high school, so go ahead and study. But I didn't. I disliked studying, but more than that, I didn't want to trouble my mother. I started working at a small auto parts factory. It was good that I worked there for many years, but last year, due to the recession, the factory went bankrupt. So, I reluctantly joined my current company as a contract worker. But I was not accustomed to using a computer, so the paperwork was very difficult for me. Even changing the font size was a struggle. And above all, my biggest challenge at this workplace is my boss, Catherine. Being targeted by Catherine. You're having a tough time, huh? No, I'm used to it now. Encouraged by Mike, a full-time employee, I forced a wry smile. Mike, over 50, is a regular employee and also my mentor. I was supposed to become the section chief, you know, but President Johnson forced his way. Oh, I heard the rumor. Catherine got in through connections, right? Exactly. She's President Johnson's niece. It's too weird for such a harsh young woman to become a section chief within a few years of joining, don't you think? What can I say? I muttered vaguely, but inwardly, I thought that might be the case. It's not just me. Catherine is known for being tough on her subordinates. The gossip hits the nail on the head. She probably knows she lacks the skills and is taking out her irritation on the employees. I secretly think so. What are you talking about? Just then, unfortunately, Catherine came over while we were talking, snapping me back to reality. No, it's nothing. Oh, I know. You must have been gossiping about me. You were probably talking about my connections again anyway. Catherine snorted and glared at us sharply. No, that's not what we were talking about. Mike tried to offer a polite smile, but Catherine kept glaring at us without moving. Both of you, an extra hour of overtime. Got it. Yes. I've mentioned that I can't do overtime. Isn't your mother hospitalized? The nurses are there to look after her, so you don't need to assist, right? Her words sparked anger in me. I don't want her meddling in my mom's affairs. Plus, I've told them that I can't do overtime. Acting all high and mighty, what's her deal? But I swallowed the rising emotion and, looking down, said to her, Understood. That's better. She snorted at me and walked away. Man, seriously, what's her deal? Mike, I'm fine, really. But the way she said that, we were bad-mouthing her too, so I guess it's fair. While shaking with anger, Mike tried to smile, and I quietly lifted my head. That's right. I can't let myself be beaten by the bullying of such a young girl. I can't quit my job now, not just for my mom. My mom had collapsed a few months ago. The doctor said it was due to overwork. Years of restraining herself suddenly took their toll on her. Well, that's what happened today. Sorry, I come to visit and all I do is complain. No, it shows you're working hard. Just let it all out. Visiting me at the hospital, my mom always had kind words for me. To avoid worrying her, I absolutely can't quit my job. I don't have time to listen to the snide remarks of a 20-something girl. Let those who want to talk, talk. By the way, about Emily in the next room. The girl you've taken a liking to, right? Lately, her sister's been too busy to visit. She seems lonely. I'm a bit concerned. Mind if I go check on her? Is it okay if I join you? Yes, of course. Emily is a high school girl hospitalized in this hospital. Bored, my mom had met her in the hospital hallway, and they quickly hit it off. Emily is really honest and adorable, but it's tough for her. Her parents are ill. Well, she's having a hard time. As we walked down the hallway, my mom told me about Emily. And we arrived in front of her room. Emily, how are you? Oh, hi, my sister just came to visit. Oh, is that Susan? Thank you for always taking care of my sister. Hearing that voice, I was startled. It was a voice I recognized. But surely not. Catherine. We looked at each other, our eyes wide with shock. Because there stood Catherine herself. That girl is my sister. Catherine and I were talking in the hospital waiting room. We couldn't have had this complicated conversation in Emily's room, and besides, I didn't want to show my mom that I was being scolded by a younger boss. So, your sister is hospitalized. Yeah, she needs another surgery because of complications from an accident. An accident. When she was little, she had a car accident coming back from an amusement park with our parents. I was home, busy with my thesis and was safe, but, so your parents are? As I asked, she looked down and shook her head. My dad is still bedridden in the hospital. My mom's in a wheelchair, and I take care of her. So, you've been working nonstop for your sister's sake. That's right. My uncle, seeing our situation, hired me through connections. Oh, but I earned my position as section chief through my own efforts. Yet, all you guys do is gossip, which really gets to me. She clenched the can of coffee she was drinking. I'm sorry. I didn't know your situation. Well, at least you're honest enough to apologize. I smiled wryly at her words. But I was surprised to find out that the Susan who Emily admires is actually your mom. I had no idea that the Emily my mom cares about was your sister. That makes sense, she said, taking a sip of her coffee. My mom has been working herself sick since my dad passed away. I didn't go to high school to help her. Now, at my age, I'm just a contract worker. I laughed bitterly at my own situation. She listened to my story, her face turning pale. I didn't know that you had such a hard time. I'm sorry. I thought you just didn't like school and didn't go to high school. I didn't like studying, but I would have preferred to go to high school. It was tough even becoming a full-time employee. She smiled wryly at my words. Then, she looked at me earnestly. I've always been frustrated by the gossip and took it out on you guys. Even though I've worked hard and got promoted, everyone just says it's all connections. I felt like no one acknowledged my effort. But I'll stop now. There are probably many like you, Ryan, struggling in ways we don't see. Everyone's so busy they tend to only see the worst in others. Maybe you're right. After our conversation, my view of Catherine changed completely. She must have been desperate to protect her family. With her father in a coma after a car accident, her mother in a wheelchair, and her sister needing surgery for complications, Catherine's life must be incredibly tough. I couldn't even begin to imagine. And yet, she worked hard and became a section chief. Catherine might be an amazing person. I felt a bit ashamed. I hadn't been doing overtime because of my mom's illness, relying on being a contract worker, maybe even avoiding working hard. She must have been tirelessly pushing forward despite her difficulties. But surely, that made her blind to her surroundings. Maybe you should take some time off. That's not an option. It would trouble my uncle. He hired me out of kindness. She would eat lunch at her desk without leaving, working while eating, staying late at the office every day, always busy. No, maybe Mr. Johnson wants you to rely on him a bit more. Why do you say that? Since I'm closer in age to Mr. Johnson, if I were him, I'd want you to depend on me more. I shared my thoughts. Then she cheerfully said, you know, advice from someone older does carry a different weight. Ah, you're back to your usual self, Catherine. Oh, really? Was I off before? Yes. You seemed down earlier. Well, I was upset with myself for blaming someone in the same situation. It's understandable I'd feel that way. She smiled sadly at my words. But you've reflected on it now, right? If only reflection could make everything okay. Don't worry, being aware of oneself is important, I said, smiling at her. Somehow, that makes sense to me, just the wisdom of life experience. We looked at each other and laughed. I had always thought of her as overly assertive and tough, but maybe a woman needs to be that clear-cut to grab a position in her 20s. And perhaps that stubbornness was necessary to overcome her difficult life. From that day on, Catherine changed remarkably. In what way, you ask? Hey Ryan, there's a mistake in this document. I'm sorry. I've corrected it for you, so be careful next time. Thank you. While she still pointed out mistakes firmly, she began to offer subtle support. Man, what's up with Catherine lately? Mike asked me, looking concerned. Who knows, something must have happened, I said, smiling at him. And there was a change in me too. Hey, have you thought about attending an online university? But I haven't studied for over 20 years. That's exactly why you should do it. It's never too late to start. You're right. Thank you for the advice. Each time I visited my mom's hospital, I ended up talking with Catherine, who was visiting her sister Emily. I took your advice and leaned on my uncle a bit, and he said I could use my paid leave next week. That's great to hear, and I'm a bit happy you took my advice, Catherine. Don't get it twisted. I only listened because you're more experienced in life. Is that so? I said with a wry smile, finding her suddenly resembling a normal girl in her 20s. At that time, I couldn't imagine she would become my life partner. Hey, about tomorrow, after dropping off Mom at the daycare, could you deliver some pajamas to my dad's hospital? Sure, I'll do that, and I'll pick up Emily from her part-time job too. Thanks. Then I'll go get mother-in-law's medication. From then on, Catherine and I began seeing each other not just at work, but also at the hospital, growing closer as we talked more. After I graduated from an online university and changed jobs, I secured a full-time position. Last year, we bought a house and now live together with her sister. My mom was thrilled to suddenly have 2 daughters. Catherine has become much calmer now, with a kinder smile. Sometimes I miss her old fiery spirit. Next year, we're going to have our wedding. No longer just a boss and subordinate, but husband and wife. I'm determined to make her happy for life, and today, like every day, I'm enjoying our busy life together.